저희 ETF 영상이 반응이 되게 좋았잖아요. 그때 소개해 주신 책에 작가를 또 인터뷰를 해오셨다고 들었습니다.
제가 드디어 데이비드 가트너를 만났습니다. 이게 저한테 진짜 특별한 게 뭐냐면은 데이비드 가트너가 모틀리 풀이라는 그 미국에서는 유명한 투자 자문회사를 만든 분이에요. 그리고 여기서 모틀리 풀이라는 팟캐스트도 운영을 하는데 제가 이 팟캐스트를 진짜 초기부터 들었어요. 한 15년째 듣고 있어서 데이비드 가트너는 제 오랜 투자 멘토 같은 분이에요.
성덕이 되셨군요.
네, 완전. 그래서 저는 그 인터뷰할 때 목소리 듣는데도 너무 목소리가 익숙하니까 나는 아는 사람 같았어. 참고로 이번 데이비드 가트너와의 인터뷰가 국내 최초 인터뷰고 제가 투자에 대해서 이제 궁금한 거를 많이 미키피디아를 대표해서 많이 물어봤습니다. 이분의 이번 새 책 규칙파괴자에 있는 투자 원칙들을 봐도 저희가 채널에서 자주 얘기하는 원칙들과 결이 같기 때문에 이번 인터뷰 보시고 책도 한번 본다면 더 큰 도움 될 것 같아요. 첫 번째 질문으로 요즘 주식시장이 불확실성으로 가득 차잖아요. 그래서 지금 시장 상황은 어떻게 보고 있는지 일단 이거부터 여쭤봤어요. So we're no stranger to uncertainty. There's never a time when market feels certain. However, the current market feels like we're in a different level of uncertainty. How do you view the current market environment?
Well, I do think that it's very volatile. And I know that historically the Kospi has been volatile. The Korean markets have, as have the United States. And of course, with some wars going on worldwide, that's creating a lot of instability. I really don't spend a lot of time worrying about the near term or getting excited about the near term. There are lots of reasons to be excited, AI, etc. But I think that we're invested for our whole lives, I hope. That's very important to me in my style, rule breaker investing. And so for this reason, I try to look past the headlines and not be too influenced by whatever I hear people saying about the market. I try to save on a regular basis, find the best companies, let's buy and hold.
There's always uncertainty, but maybe present uncertainty feels much more overwhelming because it's present.
I'm going to say that you can find uncertainty every single day. And truly, if you're somebody with a mindset who's looking for or fearing uncertainty, you will always find it. There is always another reason or headline to think. Even when the market does well, some people start saying, well, it's done so well, I shouldn't buy now. So I think that what's really important is to train your mindset to look for progress, not certainty. And over our lives, I think I'm a little older than you, but we're sort of near the same age. And those of us who are adults have watched tremendous technological progress. Just look at Samsung over the last 25 years. So you can see that's really what we're buying and holding as rule breaker investors. We're looking for progress, and I see it everywhere with more coming. That's where I stay focused. As an investor, I look a lot more at companies rather than the market, and I look a lot more at excellence rather than just any company.
저는 이 시장에 불확실성이 없는 시기는 없다. 이거가 진짜 맞는 말 같아요. 그래서 시장이 불확실성에 자꾸 집중하지 말고 내가 투자하는 기업에 집중하자. 이거는 정말 영양가 있는 조언인 것 같아요. 그럼 기업에 집중하려면 뭘 봐야 되냐? 이번에 책에 보면은 규칙을 파괴하는 기업의 6가지를 이야기합니다. 규칙 파괴 기업의 6가지 속성이라고 부르는데 이 중에서 뭐를 제일 강조하고 싶냐고 제가 여쭤봤어요. 참고로 영어로 탑덕이라는 표현을 쓰셨는데 영어로 탑덕은 제일 잘 나가는, 제일 강한 이런 뜻이에요. 그래서 우리가 영상에서 개석거라 기업이라고 하는 기업과 일맥상통하는 표현입니다. So in your book, you outline a great framework for investors, the 6 traits of rule breaker companies. Which of these traits would you highlight as the most critical?
So I do have 6 traits that I look for in rule breaker companies. And this, by the way, is my book. And I'm so proud. It's such a beautiful color of gold. In this book, I speak to the 6 traits that I look for most of all. And the number 1 is top dog and first mover in an important emerging industry. Let's take a quick example. Let's go with Intuitive Surgical. Now, this is not necessarily a company that everybody listening to me, even in the US, will identify as a company, but this is the company at the forefront of robot-assisted surgery. And this company has been there for 20 years, and the stock is up more than 100 times in value, and I would buy it today. In fact, I continue to hold it today. And if you had never heard of Intuitive Surgical, that should make you even more bullish. Certainly, technology is affecting all areas of our society, generally creating progress, and one of them is minimally invasive surgery. Intuitive Surgical is a great example, Mickey, of a top dog and first mover in an important emerging industry. There are many different industries. Not every industry is interesting to me. I don't spend a lot of time looking at oil. I'm not that interested in transportation. I stay focused on emergent new possibilities for our world. Of course, the internet has created that over the last 30 years. AI is creating that over the next 30 years. But I would say trait number one, top dog and first mover in an important emerging industry. If you fish in a pond with only fish that are those kinds of companies, I would say that is a stocked pond. You are going to do very well as an investor if you stay focused on the leaders in technology.
시대를 이끌어가는 신흥 산업의 선도 기업에 투자하는 거. 이거는 저도 제일 좋아하는 투자 방법이에요. 그럼 이런 선도 기업을 어떻게 찾아라고 생각하시는 분도 있을 것 같은데 이거를 찾는 스냅과 콜라 테스트라는 재밌는 방법이 있고 요건 영상 후반부에 소개하니까 참고해 주세요. 그리고 또 어떤 분들은 선도 기업은 이미 많이 올랐고 나는 다음에 선도 기업이 될 기업을 미리 찾을 거야 이런 생각하시는 분들도 있는데 이런 접근은 어떻게 생각하시는지 한번 여쭤봤어요.
I would say, first of all, that is a very interesting approach to take, and I would never dissuade somebody in your channel or a friend of mine at a cocktail party. I would never say, don't buy that company. In fact, I think if you and I have an interest or a fascination with a new technology or company, the first thing you should do is just buy a few shares. Just buy a few shares. You don't have to establish a whole position, but we invest in order to predict the future. That is a great line from one of the top venture capital firms in the United States, Kleiner Perkins. They say we invest in order to predict the future. So when you start by buying shares first, you're going to start paying more attention. And so I'm fascinated with intellectual curiosity by what's happening in the world. So if I meet anybody who says, I'm interested in this, it's not a big company yet, or it's not the leader, but I think it could be emergent, then I'm interested. I will say, though, that many people think they have to get in on the ground floor. And I disagree with that. I know I'm speaking to somebody who is a very talented businessman and entrepreneur who worked at a company I know very well, Alphabet, Google. And so you know yourself that Alphabet has been a fantastic stock for the last 15 years, and it was already very big 15 years ago. So I think a lot of times we don't realize, we think you have to find this tiny acorn that will grow into an oak, but I prefer to have a sapling, not just an acorn, that really looks beautiful, especially if I don't see any competition around it in the forest. It's just growing on its own. So I like to stay focused on those top dogs and first movers, Mickey, but I'm never going to say to somebody that you shouldn't buy a company that really interests you. You should.
내가 꼭 바닥에 들어가야 된다는 생각은 버리고 어느 정도 가능성을 보여준 이후에 투자해도 늦지 않는다는 전략. 이거 진짜 저는 공감합니다. 양자 컴퓨터가 앞으로 미래니까 야 나는 미리 먼저 들어가 있어야 돼 라는 투자보다는 어느 정도 양자 컴퓨터에서 실적과 결과를 보여줄 때 그때 투자해도 늦지 않는다는 거죠. 그러면서 내 포트에 주가가 오르는 기업에 오히려 더 투자를 하고 주가가 떨어지는 기업에는 투자하지 말라는 책에서 전하는 투자 습관과도 잘 연결이 되는 것 같아서 이 전략에 대해서도 더 여쭤봤어요. 참고로 주가가 떨어지는 기업에 돈을 더 넣는 거를 우리는 물타기라고 부릅니다. 영어로는 더블 다운이라고 많이 해요. 도박할 때 판돈을 2배로 올리는 거를 더블 다운이라고 해요.
This is very important. So also in this book, we have the 6 habits of the rule breaker investor. And I start the book with habits because while everybody wants to talk about stocks, and I do too, and we're doing that now ourselves, the truth is that I can say to somebody, I love Amazon, which I did in 1997, and I still hold the stock 29 years later. It has been a fantastic investment. But if they don't hold it, then it didn't matter that I told them Amazon. If it had a bad year or quarter and they sell, or if it doubles and they say, well, I always sell something that doubles. These kinds of things. People have habits that they set in their own minds. It's a story we tell ourselves about how we should invest. And I think it's very important to have good habits. So the first 6 habits I list, that leads off the book. And you've just referenced habit number 2, which is to add up. Don't double down. And in my experience, 4 of the most harmful words ever invented, this is in the United States anyway, this is a very common saying, perhaps in Korea as well. Buy low, sell high. And the reason I don't like that phrase is the 3rd word out of most people's mouth is sell. And as soon as people buy, they've been taught or they have a habit that they now need to have a target price or sell discipline. This is really a mistake. We just talked about Alphabet, Google. I mentioned Intuitive Surgical, Tesla, Netflix. The list goes on of companies. It was a huge mistake to sell Nvidia or Amazon at any point in the last 25 years. And people who come to a rule breaker book signing say things like, I had Apple. but I only held it for 1 year and I regret that. And I'm like, I would regret that too. I'm so sorry to hear that. I've in part written my book in order to teach people not to have those regrets by holding great companies. I say always be buying, and especially let's add new money to the things that are going up, not the ones that are going down. The only way you can get poor as a stock market investor is if you keep adding to something that goes down over time. So I have a personal rule, which I'm sharing with you. You already know it though, and thank you for being such a fellow rule breaker. But the rule is I don't throw good money after bad. I will not invest in a stock that is down. Even if I still like it, it has to prove to me that it's going to be a good company by getting up above 0% return. It has to be positive for me to add money to it. And when I do add money, I always add to my winners. And I know you know that is very contrary. Most people do the opposite. That's why I'm a rule breaker.
Water the flowers, not the weeds.
Yes.
Right?
That's exactly right. Just a famous investor worldwide and has respect in Korea. Peter Lynch is the one who's credited with saying too many people are cutting their flowers and watering their weeds when they should be doing the exact opposite when it comes to the stock market. And it really is true. Just think about it. The stock market is a horse race. And once a horse gets out front, it's probably going to win. And you should be betting on that horse during the race, which is part of what you can do in the stock market. You can't do that in horse racing or any other form, but you really can with the stock market. This is an important analogy that I make in the book.
저는 요 경마와 투자 비유한 거 이거 너무나 좋았어요. 경마는 내가 경기가 시작하기 전에 베팅을 해야 되는데 주식 투자라는 거는 경기가 시작된 다음에 어떤 말이 빨리 달리는지를 본 다음에 투자할 수 있다. 이거 저는 이거 진짜 좋은 인사이트. 저 앞으로 이거 진짜 많이 써먹을 예정입니다. 다음으로 우리가 너무 좋아하는 포트폴리오. 포트폴리오가 왜 중요하고 좋은 포트폴리오란 무엇인가에 대해서 또 여쭤봤어요. Because in your book, you mentioned that a portfolio should reflect one's view of the future. Why is portfolio management so important and what defines a great portfolio?
You know, if you do have good habits, that's part one, and then you find good stocks with the right traits, that's part two, then what is going to be created by those things? Your habits and your stocks lead to a portfolio. And that's part three of the book. And in my experience, most people don't have much training or coaching around how to build a portfolio. So I thought it was very important to speak to that. And you've just referenced my favorite of my 6 portfolio principles. Principle number 1 is to make your portfolio reflect your best vision for our future. Not your broker's best vision, not your money manager's best vision. I would say not everybody has grand visions of the future, but a lot of us do have passions, hobbies, interests. And I think that that should be represented in your portfolio. And it should be as if I'm visiting you at your home and you have books on your shelf. And when I see your books, maybe you're going off to get me a drink. I'm just looking at your books and I'm like, I feel like I know Mickey pretty well because our books are our friends. The same thing should be true if I look up and down your brokerage statement for your portfolio. I should be able to say, oh, I see this person. Now I can understand some of what they're interested in and what drives them. So not only is it an easier, more fun way to invest by investing in the things that we're eating, that we're putting on, that we're using on our phones, that are out there in the world at large, technologies that fascinate us, but I also believe very strongly you will actually do better. There is no trade-off between the things that you care about and your performance. I believe those things are aligned directly. So I'm always trying to get anybody who follows and has conversations like this, that like you and I are having right now, Mickey, I'm trying to say, let's make sure that we're reflecting who we are in how our money is invested. And you'd be surprised how few people actually do that.
내 관심사에 투자하는 거는 저도 오랫동안 해온 투자 방법이에요. 그럼 만일에 지금 새롭게 포트폴리오를 만든다면 어떻게 만드실 건지에 대해서 여쭤봤습니다. 참고로 이분의 투자 자문회사 이름이 머들리 풀인데 셰익스피어 희극에 나오는 진실만 말하는 광대 이름이 머들리 풀이에요. 그래서 머들리 풀 회사 로고도 그 광대 모습입니다. 그래서 이날 광대 모자를 갖고 오셨어요. 그래서 저한테 인터뷰 중에 언제 쓰면 좋을지 알려줘라고 하셨어요. You were to build a brand new portfolio today. How would you structure it? We want a secret Molly Fool formula date. Maybe it's the time that you wear your hat.
Yeah. So I'm glad that you asked me about how I would build a portfolio today. And
I love it.
It's very important, obviously, if I'm a motley fool, to occasionally put on my jester cap as I answer this important question. I would start with a minimum of 20 stocks. I feel it's very important that you be diversified, and portfolio principle number 3 in the book is fair starting line. And we go back to horse racing here, because at the horse races, every horse starts at the exact same point. And I believe that's exactly what you should do with your money in your portfolio. So if you have, I'll just say $10,000 US dollars, I would have $500 in 20 different stocks. And some of those stocks will be your favorites, and you'll feel like you know them much better than some others. And by the way, I earlier said that you don't always have to have it all in stocks. If you want to put a portion in index funds, you certainly can. But I believe it's very important to have a balanced portfolio at the start of your journey. And if I were building one today, and by the way, I'm doing that, I just had my first grandchild. I'm 59 years old and I'm a grandfather now. Because getting kids started and grandkids started investing is one of the great gifts that we can give on this planet to the next generation. So I start right away with 20 or more stocks. Now, again, not everybody thinks they have 20 ideas at the start, and you can supplement if you want with an index fund. But it's important to stay balanced. And guess what happens? The very next day after you started that portfolio, right away, some things start to win and some things start to lose, and you immediately lose that balance, and you'll never have that balance again. And I'm fine with that. And I start to ignore my losers. They're going to have to get back to be winners if I'm going to invest in them again. Even if I thought they were my best idea and I love the company and I think the market is wrong, I'm not going to invest in that until it goes to a positive return. By the way, these are principles. Sometimes I even break my own rules, but I hope the principles are clear. So that's what I would do. I would start with a balanced portfolio of 20 amazing companies that I love, that I think are top dogs and first movers in important emerging industries. And, obviously I might mix in some other big companies like, let's say, Samsung, right? It's not that you're always only looking for emergent companies. I also love Google Alphabet. Like Alphabet is an amazing company, and there's many other. Amazon is an amazing company. These are great stocks to have, and I own them too. So, but that's what I would do. I would always have that balanced portfolio to start.
Do you ever sell your losers? Just sell them off because they're losing?
Yes, I do. Yes, in fact, the number one reason that I do is for whatever reason need to sell a stock. I don't sell stocks just to sell. I sell because I'm going to be using the money for something. It might be to put a child through college or afford a new house, or it might be just be because I'm getting near retirement. That's really why most people invest. So I don't sell because I have any thought about market conditions. I sell, and it's usually my winners, and I sell them off in bits and pieces, charitable reasons sometimes. And what I do then is I tag against that some losers. Most people are spending too much time trading. And I define trading in the book as spending a lot of time trying to make money maybe half the time. And I realize some people love trading and that's their passion. And I don't want to say that that's wrong, but I will say for most of us, it's a big mistake, especially most of all trading out of the market altogether, because we've already talked about the KOSPI and other indices like the S&P 500 in the United States. They go up 9% or so annualized. Therefore, you do not want to get off that train. You want to start in Seoul and go all the way to the East Coast. You want to stay on the train. Again, we're living in a world where most of the institutions and Wall Street here in the US trades in and out constantly. So we have a great advantage as individual investors. We don't have to do that.
데이비드 가드너는 워낙 전문 투자자셔서 지수보다는 20개 이상의 기업의 분산 투자가 가능하겠지만은 이제 일반 투자자들이 20개를 고르기는 저는 너무 빡세다고 생각을 합니다. 제 포트에도 개별 주식은 10개 정도가 있어요.
20개 다 매 분기마다 실적 보고 이거 너무 힘들 것 같긴 한데요.
이분은 가능하시면 우리는 힘든. 그래서 우리 지난주 장기 투자 영상에서도 얘기한 것처럼 포트폴리오를 꾸릴 때 의미 있는 비중은 지수 ETF를 넣어서 내가 의미 있게 분산하는 거. 저는 이게 일반 개미 투자들이 접근할 수 있는 가장 좋은 방법이라고 생각을 해요. 마지막으로 이제 AI 시대. 그럼 AI 시대에 우리는 규칙 파괴자 기업을 어떻게 찾을 수 있을까에 대해서 여쭤봤습니다.
Well, that's the right question. And it was true 30 years ago when the whole world had a plate tectonic shift because of the internet. A new medium was born, and many companies, it wasn't an industry, it was a technology that gave birth to new industries. And that's exactly what's happening now with artificial intelligence. And it's just as profound and just as important. And it's also worth remembering that it took about 10 years before Airbnb or Uber even showed up. They weren't there when Amazon.com started. In fact, Google came after Yahoo, for those who remember some internet history. So this is my reminder to all of us that nobody has to be a genius today and think that they have to get all their money in the AI stocks of right now. Because many of those companies will not be very important in 10 years when brand new companies start with undreamt of technologies or possibilities that we can't even understand now. Amazon, when it was founded, Jeff Bezos did not know what the cloud would be. There was no sense of Amazon Web Services, no way. It was an online bookstore. So this is my reminder. Number one, pay attention. Number two, don't be anxious. Many great new industries that don't even exist today will be powered by AI, and you and I, looking for the rule breakers, we can buy those stocks when they show up. And I want to give a simple two-step test, which is very important in the book, but I want to mention my SNAP test and my COLA test really briefly and put those together for our viewers. The first one is the SNAP test. If you snapped your fingers overnight and the stock you're looking at disappeared, I would say how many people would notice the next day, how many people would care. In my experience, the companies where everyone would notice and many people would care, that's going to be a stock I want to own.
Oh, I love it.
Opposite, when no one notices and people didn't even like the company or they don't care, I never want to own that company. So I always apply my SNAP test whenever I look at a new emerging company. And of course, if it's a lesser known company, not as many people will know, but do the people who were customers, would they be heartbroken if that company disappeared? Very important. Or technology partners, very important. So that's the SNAP test. Always look for the rule breakers that pass the SNAP test. And then my other test, it's a 1-2 punch here, is my COLA test. You know Coca-Cola, and I think you know Pepsi-Cola, even though there are more healthy Korean drinks out there. But at least here in the US, I've always said the COLA test. If you look at a company and in your mind, they're the Coca-Cola of their industry. They're the leader. The question is, can you find the Pepsi Cola? Is there a second company that clearly has something very similar, making it very replaceable, a legitimate competitor? And you know what I'm about to say. I love the companies where you cannot find any Pepsi Cola. So if you snap your fingers and if the company disappeared, people would be heartbroken and there would be headlines, not just business, but national headlines. That's step one. Step two, if you can't find a Pepsi Cola, that's exactly what explains Amazon, Tesla, Netflix. Even though there are things today that compete with Netflix, Netflix started with DVDs mailed through the mail. Like there was nothing like it. And so that was such a good indicator. So and then when you put those two together, I call it Snap Cola. And so when a company gets a check mark and a check mark, those are the AI companies of today and the future, not just AI, but we're talking about AI, that I will be looking at to be a part owner of those stocks. And I will ignore the ones that don't pass my two tests.
So we can sit back and watch this AI horse race and see who's winning. And once we figure the Snap Cola company, then we invest. It's not too late. We'll still make a reasonable, healthy profit out of it.
I feel very strongly about that. That was said much more succinctly than I said. I took about 5 minutes. You just said it in about 15 seconds.
I use
Yes.
all the examples that you taught me.
I'm honored and delighted to have spent this time with you. And I think that your fans and viewers, and I know you have a large viewership, are very fortunate to have somebody with the vision and the goodness that you have shown me. And I've really enjoyed our time together. So thank you for the invitation.
David, thank you for sharing all of your insight. And people can find more about David's insight on his new book. 요 스냅과 콜라 테스트 저는 이거 너무 좋았습니다. 앞서 말한 경마와 비유한 거와 더불어서 요 두 가지는 진짜 좋은 인사이트를 주는 것 같아요. 오늘 인터뷰한 동안 데이비드 가트너가 전한 투자 관련 내용들도 당연히 너무 좋았지만 이분의 그 이야기하는 스타일 있잖아요. 간결하게 핵심만 딱딱 이야기하고 이상한 군더더기나 막 중구난방 산으로 가는 거 전혀 없으면서 항상 그 상대방을 배려하시면서 이야기를 하시더라고요. 저는 이번 인터뷰하면서 진짜 어른이라면 저렇게 이야기를 해야 되는구나라는 생각을 정말로 많이 했습니다. 그래서 이 말하는 스타일에 대해서도 많이 배웠어요. 데이비드 가트너의 투자 원칙뿐만 아니라 세련되게 말하는 법까지 배우고 싶다면 오늘 영상을 여러 번 보시면 됩니다. 그럼 저는 다음 시간에 더 재밌고 유익한 주제로 돌아오도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.